After the committee has taken the time to peruse the agenda, I would like to have a motion.
I have perused, Mr. Chairman. I will make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second, all in favor? Let me
Don't
know.
everybody rush to this.
Aye. Aye. Poses by the same sign. New business, community funded project request for air traffic control tower. All right.
Good
Jeff,
afternoon.
how you doing, Mr. Powell?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
We find ourselves from having to pivot from time to time as we learn about opportunities that involve federal funding. Our air traffic control towers is just a little over 50 years now, and we've been having the foresight to try to see when the FAA plans to make a necessary renovation or replacement of our air traffic control tower. There are key service and capability for days like our game days when we have hundreds of planes coming in. So we want to make sure that that piece of infrastructure is good to go for the next 10, 20, 30 and beyond. So we've been working on coordinating with FAA of trying to see when they're planning, understanding what their needs and challenges are. And we've pursued congressional options to try to replace our tower. We did so last year in looking at what available accounts that we can request federal funding, and one of those was directly through the FAA, and that would maintain the existing relationship we currently have where it's a federally owned air traffic control tower. And every year that guidance and eligible requests change from year to year, and one thing that we've recently seen when they published FY25 guidance is that we cannot request that federally funded account to maintain it to be a FAA-owned tower. And the two options that airports have is FAA-owned or sponsored-owned or city-owned towers. Most of your new towers are city-owned towers. The Gulf Shores Airport, the new tower coming online is sponsored-owned or city-owned. So that's not uncommon, but that changes the dynamic of how the city is involved. That means we are responsible for maintaining the building and any future costs associated with maintaining the infrastructure or the equipment inside. It does not mean that we are responsible for the personnel. That stays federally funded. There's no change there.
Currently, is the FAA paying for what you're talking about, those expenses?
That's correct.
They're paying for all that.
That's
We
correct.
do not pay for our tower. Do we lease it?
We,
Or what do we do?
it's their
They own it?
building, and they maintain and cover those costs. The only expense the city has with the current tower is paying for overtime during our football or game day weekends when we have late games. So because of that change, it's caused us to say, hey, do we want to wait to see if the FAA wants to continue or has plans to do something? There's over 350 towers out there. Recent reports showed about 250 of those are in the fair or poor category. So they've got a heavy lift of seeing how they're going to address towers. So we don't see a lot of opportunities in the next 5 to 10 years that we will be in the initial list of towers they try to replace. So we've been asking internally, do we want to look at being into the sponsored owned category? Do we want to get involved? There's some benefits there that we can kind of help control the design of the building. Still has to meet all the requirements from the FAA standpoints, but from the looks of the building, you get a little more say-so in that. When you request grants or congressional spending, that starts a match requirement, where previously it's just fully federally funded 100%. But if we want to go forward in looking at just design or design and construction, that says that we would have to provide a 10% match.
And that's with the sponsorship, correct?
Sponsored-owned version of this. So we would like to or recommend looking at just the design, conduct the site study, the EA, so we can find out more information, and then that may be a gate of whether we continue to go forward or not. That would be it'd probably make us more competitive if they want to look at us further down the road, if they want to pick us up on a F8 side, or if we want to choose to continue going sponsored owned. Our proposal is that we would have a 10% match. The total project for design and site selection study would be $1 million. We would just be covering the 10%, which is $112,000.
So if you won the grant, they pay for 90% of the tower, we pay for 10, and then we take the maintenance over. We would be if that happened, right? Then we would be responsible for the tower and own it, right?
We would
Or
just
no?
be doing the professional services of evaluating what this would look like.
But I'm saying the next step after this.
That's
If-
right.
If this is just to evaluate, I'm sorry, I'm getting way ahead. But if we said we want to do that, it's a 90-10 deal, and then we take over the operating expenses of it,
That's correct.
and we own it.
That's correct.
And then all they do is pay the people, not the overtime.
That's correct.
Do we know, I mean, this is probably too early to ask this question, do you have an estimate of what you think it would cost to run this per year?
We talked to Gulf Shores. They just opened a tower 2 years. They're budgeting between 20 and 40,000 a year right now. Most of that's for janitorial, but for utilities and insurance, I think the first 10, 15 years it's not going to be a huge risk in capital expenses. I think once you get into the later years and doing major replacements, that could be a higher expense. Because it is sponsored owned, we are the things that need to be done to the facility are grant eligible. So there is a scenario where those things, as they go through their life cycle, we can go into a grant scenario of requesting those replacements. But from what we're seeing right now, 20 to 45,000 is what we would be budgeting for maintaining that facility.
Based on what you know, what do you think a new tower would probably cost? Rough,
It's going to be around 10 million.
10 million.
The one thing that's going to be a major change for ours is, since 1970 when it was built, the requirements for controllers to operate safely and efficiently is line of sight is one of those. So our current length of runway now, they need a taller tower. With the runway extension, they even need a taller tower from that. It's going to be about 85 feet where our current tower is about 50. It's very close to what Gulf Shores built. I think theirs was around 8.5, and that's $20 to $22. So that kind of matches up when you start doing inflation.
The Feds paid what? Was it not, the Feds paid 90% of that?
They lucked out during COVID that they made all grants 100%. So it was perfect timing, but in normal cases it would be a 90%, 10% match. Sometimes the state's able to participate and they would cover 5%. We try not to guarantee that because we never know if their budget's going to allow for that. So we factor in 10%, and if the city or the states allow to participate, then our percentage would go down to 5%.
If one day our community decided that we wanted to do an airport authority, is that an issue with that asset if it's built?
It would not be. It would just be.
Because we would own it.
That's correct.
The city would own it.
And
So
it
we
depends on how that arrangement were to work out. If you lease the airport, so the city maintains ownership, but the authority would lease from the city. I'm sure there's a lot more legality parameters to that, but
But it wouldn't be a big deal to lease that asset to someone else or whatever,
That's-
another authority. No, I think that's, Mr. Chairman, I think we need to go down that road because we need to figure out where we're at with all this stuff. Doesn't make sense not to. So we've made a lot of improvements at the airport.
I was telling Jeff, I said I would like for him next time to come and to give an update to us about all of the good things that have happened in the airport in the last, so on and months ago, because you're right, there have been a lot of great changes to the airport, and I want to thank you for your leadership and how you're working with the airport. I think it's a great asset to our community
And to
and to
your
our city.
point, Mr. Chairman, it would be really interesting with the stuff Mr. Estes has done, all the other things, Bama Dixie, the other things that have happened.
absolutely.
It would be good to see a before and after picture.
Mm-hmm.
Here's where we were, here's what has been invested, and continue to give your vision of kind of where we're going with this. Because I think the more we can get private dollars to update these hangars and do the things that we're doing, I think that's a good thing.
Absolutely. I would say a lot of those things are because of the support y'all provided, and we are bringing large projects to the city council, but that's really just a result of us trying to advocate for the community, in that almost all the projects we do bring forward are not 100% city-funded projects. We are trying to find ways to leverage federal funding, private funding, the runway extension, the runway reconstruction, the cargo ramp, the hangar incentive policy, all things approved by the council. None of those are 100% locally funded, and we're trying to find those funding opportunities. The terminal is another one that we are not asking 100% funding from the city council. We try to be responsible for those dollars so that we can leverage it responsibly and not put the full cost on the citizens.
Good.
That's good. That's good.
Do you need a motion, Mr. Chairman? Need a motion?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir,
Motion.
we do. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Mr. Tyner's not here. Anybody else need to vote?
Is there anything else that shall come before our committee today?
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Second, all in favor?